Saturday on Denver 7 News.
We remain committed to defend our home. We resist.
Military assistance is flooding into Ukraine from around the globe this weekend as the invasion of Russian troops inches closer to Ukraine's capital. Back here at home, the fully vaccinated are encouraged to return to life as normal.
By all means, do it. Live your life, don't feel guilty.
How some are cautiously optimistic, but optimistically adjusting back. And later, this week's everyday hero, Angel, is living up to her name and helping her peers get an education. Good morning and thanks so much for joining us. We hope you're having a great start to your Saturday. I'm Micah Smith. Well, the cold has been sticking around for quite a few days. Taking a look outside right now, the sun about to rise in the sky. Absolutely gorgeous start to the day. But again, it has been very cold. Let's bring in meteorologist Stacy Donaldson. Stacy, do we have a warm up on the way? Is there some relief in sight?
There is relief in sight, and I think you're really going to like next week because it is really going to warm up. So we're in the midst of a warm up now. It's 11 degrees outside, feels like it's 1 below, and our humidity level at 81%. It's gorgeous out there this morning, just a little on the cool side. 11 degrees downtown, 0 in Greeley, 1 in Sterling, and we have 0 and below 0 temperatures up in the higher elevations. You factor in the wind, it feels well below 0 at Leadville, 25 below, 8 below Telluride, and only 2 in Lyman with 1 below at DIA. So our wake up forecast as we get through the rest of the morning starts out in the 20s around 9 a.m. and then we're into the 30s as we get toward 2 p.m. with a high of 40 degrees with mostly sunny skies. But as I mentioned, as we get into next week, much warmer air on the way, and we'll talk more about that coming up in just a few minutes.
We're following breaking international news this morning. A missile hit an apartment building in Kiev, Ukraine earlier today. This is as Russian troops continue to move toward Ukraine's capital. Ukraine's president says the country has withstood and successfully repelled enemy attacks so far. Kiev officials say fighting has broken out in the streets against Russian invaders, and they encourage residents in the area to seek shelter. Now, this comes as President Biden authorized up to $350 million in additional security and military assistance for Ukraine. The country's president is encouraging his citizens to stand firm as the Russian invasion continues. Here's ABC's Christine Sloan.
The situation in Ukraine is growing more urgent as the Russian troops invading the country push toward the capital of Ukraine. Friday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky spoke to people across his country, urging them to, quote, burn down enemies' tanks and armor with whatever means. And Ukrainians are answering the call. Alexei Goncharenko, a prominent Ukrainian lawmaker, is among them.
I don't want to fight. I'm not soldier. I'm not professional military man. But I am not ready to capitulate. That's the difference.
Authorities have handed out 18,000 weapons and are teaching people how to make Molotov cocktails. Meantime, Ukraine's ambassador to the United States remains defiant.
We remain committed to defend our home. We resist. We will not surrender our capital to the enemy.
And as the Russian invasion continues, a humanitarian disaster is unfolding. The UN says hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians are now on the move. This family making a 30-hour trek to the Polish border.
I want to come back, but I don't know if we're going to come back.
And the effort to punish Russia continues. The U.S. and the EU are now sanctioning Russian President Vladimir Putin and his foreign minister Sergei Lavrov directly. And at the UN Security Council, a U.S. and Albania-led resolution to condemn Russia for invading Ukraine failed after Russia vetoed it. The United Arab Emirates, India, and China all abstained.
History will judge us for our actions or lack thereof. But at a minimum, at the very minimum, the rest of us have an obligation to object.
The U.S. will now take the resolution to the UN General Assembly. Christine Sloan, ABC News, New York.
When it comes to the conflict between Ukraine and Russia, many on this side of the globe don't understand the issue. So we asked DU professor Rachel Epstein why this conflict exists. It's actually an issue of democracy.
Russia is really worried about a democratic Ukraine on its border because that poses a threat to the authoritarian nature of the Russian regime. Ukraine is not only democratic, but also there's a free media environment there, protesters there. Those kinds of civic activities in democratic societies have an eroding effect on authoritarian power in countries like Russia. So I think they're most worried about their own hold on power in Russia by having a democratic Ukraine next door.
There are other democratically controlled countries just outside of Russia, but they are in NATO or the European Union. That gives them more protection and makes them less vulnerable to Russian aggression and interference. And while the conflict seems far away from the United States, democracy is important all around the world.
Sovereignty and territorial integrity is also at stake. And what Russia is doing and what Russia has been doing in Ukraine since 2014 is violating Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity.
Russia isn't just a threat to the Ukraine. Russia is a threat to the United States. Epstein points out how Russia conducts ransomware attacks on the U.S., how they interfere in American politics, and points out Russia is the main propagator of disinformation. She says it's important for Americans to think about how to constrain Russian power and not give the country a larger platform. The invasion can be especially difficult to explain to kids. We know some will see it on the news or hear about it from their friends. We asked a therapist how to handle this.
Validating the emotions and feelings that one might be experiencing can be really, really important. Finding space to have those conversations in a developmentally appropriate way. We want to ensure that we're not inundating our kiddos with information that is beyond what they have the capacity to really digest.
And that is the key, giving kids age-appropriate information. As for adults, if this is causing you anxiety, you'll want to find a balance between being informed and keeping your regular routine. Experts say routine and structure correlate directly to a reduction in anxiety. There's another rally in support of peace in Ukraine today. Ukrainians of Colorado hosted a different rally last weekend. Today's event starts at 11 a.m. at the Capitol. Those organizing say they're standing up to the aggression overseas and want to focus on unity and peace. We're going to continue our coverage of the developments out of Ukraine in our next half hour. Time is now 7:03. Return to life as normal. It's easier said than done, but that's the message from Governor Jared Polis Friday. As we near the 2-year mark in the pandemic, the governor is hoping Coloradans can resume a sense of normalcy and live life freely. He says he's also working with health leaders to normalize the virus.
The virus is here and will likely be here for the rest of our lives. But it is time to acknowledge that we've reached a point in Colorado where Coloradans who are fully vaccinated can freely live without undue fear. So if you choose to go without your mask or attend a concert with your friends or simply go out to dinner and you're fully vaccinated, then by all means do it. Live your life. Don't feel guilty. You only live once. The virus isn't gone.
So let's go ahead and take a closer look at the numbers. State health leaders say more than 90% of Coloradans are immune to the Omicron variant, the most prevalent variant in our state. The state's 7-day positivity rate is below that 5% threshold, which we haven't seen in nearly 7 months. And the good news, a majority of Coloradans are vaccinated. More than 80% have received at least one dose. Even with these encouraging case trends and words from our state's leaders, local restaurants and businesses say they're still struggling. Denver 7's Christian Lopez joins us now. Christian, what are some barriers that these owners are facing moving forward?
You're right, Micah. Even as we're hearing this good news from the governor, one business owner says it still doesn't seem like there's an end in sight for some of the challenges he's been facing since this pandemic started. Now, we spoke to the owner of Carmine's in Denver, and he says even though he does feel like this is going to make people more comfortable going out to restaurants, he's still facing the same obstacles that he's been dealing with for the past 2 years.
The supply chains are a disaster. The escalation of pricing is outrageous. There's still a continuing issue with labor. There are things I've ordered months and months and months ago. I have no idea if or when they're going to arrive.
Businesses like his will likely take a while to rebound from all of these lasting impacts from the pandemic. Meanwhile, health experts are saying that this new move forward would hopefully make it easier for people to make the best decisions for themselves instead of a one-size-fits-all approach. Reporting live in Denver this morning, I'm Christian Lopez, Denver 7.
Students in Denver public schools will not have to wear masks to school starting Monday. The district said it's ending its mask mandate after the city's health department saw a rapid decrease in cases and vaccination rates in Denver, with nearly 80% vaccinated.
We will let the science and the numbers drive our decisions just like they have in the past. If there is another spike and we see another variant that comes in and we need to put our masks back on for the safety of our students and our staff, that's exactly what we'll do.
DPS is one of the last districts in the metro to end mask mandates. Statewide, 73% of Coloradans are vaccinated, but the numbers are much lower for people of color. Tomorrow there will be an equity clinic at a church in Brighton. Right now, just 41% of the Latino community is vaccinated, and the goal is to drastically increase that percentage.
I want my community to stay healthy. We must get vaccinated if we want to stay healthy. And if they don't believe in vaccines, somebody in your family don't believe in vaccines, they need to do this for the health of their grandma, their grandpa, their mom, their dad, pregnant woman, immunized compromised.
The clinic runs from 9 to 4 tomorrow at St. Augustine Church on 6th Avenue in Brighton. They'll have vaccines and flu shots for free. There's also a $100 Visa gift card for anyone 12 and over who gets vaccinated. If you get COVID, there are several outpatient treatments now available. There are monoclonal antibodies, there are steroid treatments, and there are antiviral medications, but you need to start them early in your illness.
The tricky part about antiviral medications is we usually have to get the person within 5 days of having started symptoms in order to treat them. And so we want to make sure that we capture these high-risk individuals within these windows to get them better.
The goal of these treatments is to decrease the risk of emergency room visits and hospitalizations. One elementary school student has the opportunity to be a part of a swimming program that's the first of its kind today. Plus, it's closing night for some Metro high school students where you can watch Beauty and the Beast before curtain call.